Hey, Podsters, welcome to Podcast VAs Philippines. Here we connect with podcasters, podcast managers, as well as help aspirants learn more about podcasting and podcast management. In this session, kasama natin si Dr. Barry Pierre, the CEO and founder of Pierre Medical Consulting, also the host of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry podcast, and he is also my client for almost 3 years. Sa session na ito, we will have a glimpse of the reasons why podcasters choose to hire VAs for their podcasts and why it's important na kailangan nila ng VA sa mga automations and podcast process nila. So, Podsters and Podcast VAs Philippines, this is a session that I planned for a very long time in line with our first anniversary for Podcast VAs Philippines. I would like to introduce to you Dr. Barry Pierre. He is a board certified internist, a best selling author, the CEO and founder of Pierre Medical Consulting, and my client for almost 30 years, 3 years. Who knows? It might take 30 years.
Forever. We're not going nowhere. I love it.
Hi,
That's cool.
Dr. Barry. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, and just excited to be able to speak to the group again. I'm excited to give any little wisdom I may have to kind of help move everybody forward. Definitely excited about it.
All right. Now, we've already been working together for almost 3 years, right? The last time we were recording, we were almost 2 years. And then the very first time we were going, I think about a year of working together. And now you have 180 episodes already
I know.
posted of podcasts. It's like it just doesn't end. Like, wow, the contents, the idea keeps going.
It just keeps growing. Yes.
Yes. What is your advice to anyone who wanted to start a podcast as their stepping stone
Yes.
in becoming a VA eventually?
Definitely. I think for sure, just in the aspect of having your own podcast, understanding what's the message, right? Like, what is the message that you want to convey to the audience who's going to be listening to this, right? Because you never know who's going to be listening to it. You never know where they're going to be listening to. You just know someone is taking their time to listen to your voice, right? So and be very mindful and thoughtful of that. Right, because again, there's gonna be some days you're gonna be like, I really want to record this week, and then but you have to realize that there's someone on the other side of the country, of the world. So you're like, oh, I didn't hear Dr. Pierre's
Waiting,
podcast this week, right? Like, and so like definitely establishing your why is so key, right? For any long endeavor, right? Especially because, like I said, this week was episode 190 this week, right? Like, and it just kind of keeps going. And then once you kind of establish the why, then realize, all right, what are the basic tenets that I'm going to need to get this out, right? And I think a lot of times, especially when you're starting out and you're looking around and you feel like, oh, I have to have this equipment and that microphone and this recording and this program here, when all you need is just a recording device, right? That's all you need. Is I just need to be able to record my voice. Right. And then understand, how do I get my voice to people? Right. Like, whether it be I use Libsyn. Libsyn is a very popular one. But I know there's others. Right. So I use Libsyn, but like how do I get my voice there? Right. Like, and understand. And I always tell my content creators this, is that when you're starting off, right, you can't go for perfection in the beginning, right? Because you become paralyzed. You become paralyzed with this aspect that, like, oh, it didn't sound perfect. Oh, it didn't edit perfect. Oh, like all the graphics don't look perfect. Like you wait for these aspects of perfection, and it paralyzes you, and then you never record episode 1. Right. Like, it's you have to get over it, understand that, like, I am going to get better along with this process. I am going to grow along with this process, but like, I can't do any of those things until I start. Right. Like, I can't, I'm not here right now if I never pressed the record button on my podcast and started writing blogs and I'm not here like talking to you guys. So you have to do it. You never know where it's going to end, but you have to start. So like I think this paralysis of perfection,
Mhm.
you have to get rid of it, right? You have to get rid of it. You can't like scoreboard watch. You can't look to see like, all right, do I have the best? Doesn't matter, right? Like it doesn't. I sometimes listen to my like beginning episodes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like, oh, that's all right, that's all right. I've come a long way, but understand you'll definitely get there, and then realize again, Lynn knows me. I'm a very like, all right, what are the more economical? I'm cheap, right? What are the
Mhm.
economical ways I can get this? So I'm not going for the most extravagant, this more extravagant. I want to make sure what is the baseline foundation I'm going to need to get my words right to everybody, right? And then once you do that, right, like the process is so simple, right? Like the process becomes like, all right, I got to do this, I got to do that, and then understand the business of a podcast, right? Because again, we haven't even recorded a podcast yet, but like just
Mhm.
getting in the mindset of recording a podcast is so key. And then once you get to that, it's the same thing. It's pre-production, it's actual production, and then it's post-production. And
Yep.
where do you fit in to make sure that at the end of the day, when I go to Apple iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or what all of these podcast things, that my voice is there.
Yeah. And so, if there's any podcaster listening right now who wants to move their podcast from being just a hobby into possibly using it as their main source or a source of income, something that they can, make money of, is that what is your advice on that? And is that something that, or I mean, is that okay for someone who's just starting out to think of,
Oh
or is
yeah, no,
that big too ambitious?
I definitely agree, for that aspect of it, because it makes it so much easier once you start having the goals of being able to kind of recoup from a financial standpoint.
Hmm.
I know some of the biggest things, especially when you're first starting out, right? Because again, you may not have the capital to do these things.
Yes.
So working on becoming like affiliates,
Hmm.
an Amazon affiliate. They're like just working on becoming affiliates with different products is so key, and being able to mention it like, hey, use my coupon code, use my affiliate code, and then all of a sudden being able to kind of generate income from that standpoint there is key. And then if you have the ability, especially depending on the type of podcast, selling products through your podcast, I think is the next level as well.
Yes.
Because while you're doing, and this is a lot of time we don't think about it, but while you're recording for that ear across the world, you establish yourself as a brand, right? And a lot of times
Mm.
we don't like to
Yes.
think about ourselves as a brand, but we are,
Hmm.
right? So as you continue to grow and put out content especially from a podcast related standpoint, all of a sudden you are your own platform, right?
Yes.
So you are then able to dictate things, right? You were able to say like, yeah,
Hmm.
if you want to come on my podcast, provide books for my community, like you're able to kind of do these things there. And I don't think it's far fetched at all to start thinking about the financial aspects of it, right? Because once you get into that mindset, like, all right, yep, I need to get this, because again, there's some people who they may have 100 listeners a week, but those same 100 listeners will always buy their products. Those same
Yeah.
listeners will always use their affiliates, like. And that's really where you want to go, right? You just want to be able to kind of maximize, and that's why like understanding that why, right? Like understanding
Yes.
your why is going to be so key, because once you understand the why, you're going to know exactly, all right, these are the products that I can sell, right, that I can promote during my podcast reason, and then being able to say like, all right, what else can I do in my podcast? The way we do it here, not only do we have a podcast, but then we also put it on our website, right? So now it's
Websites.
almost like a
Yes.
mini blog, right? So now I have a
Hmm.
podcast and a blog, and these are just all drivers of content, all drivers of traffic, right? That we can put ads, and all of these things there are, are doable for sure. And that's where the community and just thinking about like because the sky is the limit once you put the work in,
Yes.
but you have to put the work in.
And that's what's awesome about podcasting. It like you can repurpose like from a podcast you can do a vlog about it, or a blog about it, or an article about it. the opportunity just doesn't end. Like you
It
can
doesn't,
even
and
put a
and
short
it
video.
almost makes it simpler. I think like the way we've matured to the point now where our vlog has become our podcast, which then
Yes.
becomes our WordPress post. So now we're not even having to work harder. We're using
Mm-hmm.
one piece of content that's able to do it, right? And then at the end of the day, it's still the audio, right? Like we're just boom, 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 and then just kind of helping grow, and again, just kind of growing your brand and increasing the loyalty associated with your brand.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. If there's a podcaster listening right now who are thinking but are hesitant and not sure if they whether or not they'd go for it of getting a VA, what is your advice for them, and what do you think is the
Oh
perfect
yes,
time for
yeah.
them
No,
to get
I
one?
think the perfect time is yesterday. Right, the perfect time is yesterday to get a VA, and the reason being, especially if you're a podcaster and you've gotten to the point you either want to want to bring on to want to start a podcast, or you have a podcast and you just want to kind of help it grow. You need to
Mm-hmm.
start looking for ways to get your assistance in yesterday, right? And then and that one will help push you, right? Like especially if
Yes.
you're thinking like, how am I gonna pay for this VA? Like that's going to help push you to look for monetary outlets, right? Because now you have someone that you have to take care of. But it's
Yeah.
so much easier to look for those monetary outlets once your VA is taking care of a lot of the work that you don't have to do anymore. Right? Again, like the amount of I like the fact I had to log into my website like this morning, right? But that's because I had to
Mm-hmm.
make a special link. But like I don't even be logging into my own website. Like the amount of times I've seen my own website in the past month is like I can
Mm-hmm.
count on one hand, because I there's no point for me to go, like, because my VA takes care of that. Like she posts, it goes, and then like the job is done. So you don't realize just how
Yes.
valuable they are. So even if you're on the process, like you want to start a podcast, guess what? If you get a VA, now you don't have to learn the whole process by yourself. You guys can learn together, or you could say, hey, I'm going to focus on just the recording and getting out. You focus
Yeah.
on the podcast, getting me guests, and then posting it on my work. Like, so now the work is so much less on you. And as a content creator, like you like I was reading, no, I was listening to an audio, and they talked about how the as a content creator, you can't be doing what we consider kind of minimum wage related activities, right? Meaning
Mm-hmm.
that if my worth, right, is the benefit of my worth is getting the content out, right? Like,
Yeah.
but like if I'm spending too much time on miscellaneous tasks, then I'm not spending time on getting the content out, recording my voice, recording my video, right? So like I need to spend more time where my worth is maximized, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then delegate the stuff where it's not, right? Like, and it's so key. So yeah, if you're a podcaster, again, we're saying podcast, but if you're a content creator, right,
Yes.
you're a business person, and you don't have an assistant, one, you don't have a business, right? You have
Mm.
a hobby, right? You have a
Ah,
hobby that
yes.
you're having to run. Like you get a business when you have employees that are taking care of it, that you delegated to do the work for you. When you're doing it solo, that's a solo task hobby, right? And it's
Yeah.
usually a tiresome hobby
Hiring. Yes.
that you're not gonna do. I don't know anyone who does this at the rate that they want to do it and does it by themselves. Like
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who does that. And this is a person who, if all, like, again, like my day job, I joke, I say it in quotes, but my day job is a physician, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I am constantly asked at work, or when people see me, like, how are you able to do everything? And I said, well, I got 2 years now, but like I have people who help me. Like I don't do that. I can't do that. Like I don't have the time to do that. Like they just do it for me, and I look at my phone
Mm-hmm.
and I'm getting notifications. Like that's how it's supposed to go. But if you want to, especially if you're trying to transition, you need someone to help you transition. You cannot do this alone,
Yeah. And
despite how good you may think you are.
exactly, because the question here is the time. That's something that you can never take back. So
Nope.
um, if your VA is able to free up a lot of your time, then you would be able to focus more on the business functions, on the core of your business, and
Yep.
then that, like you said, the miscellaneous stuff, you can assign that to someone else.
You have to sign it. It's one of those things again, and mind you, I am a tech person, right? Like I record my
Yes.
videos, I record my podcast. I like doing it. I enjoy doing it. I have no problem doing it if I had to.
Hmm.
But just because I like doing it does not mean I should be doing it. Right.
Yes.
And that's what and again, that's why the should is so key. Just because you can do it, right? It'd be much
Hmm.
easier if I couldn't do it, right? Then I get a VA because I literally cannot do this stuff. But the fact
Yeah.
that I like to do it, that's what served as a bigger hurdle for me, right? Because like I like it, I was like, oh well, I could just do that, but should I? And then no, right? And then once you like once that's off of your plate, and you never have to worry about it, everything just runs so much smoother.
Yeah. Now, last question. Let's talk about getting a VA remotely, because um, a lot of people are worried about getting someone remotely because the distance, the
Sure.
internet connection, a lot of other things. They are worried about preparing these things and are not sure how to do it, how it's done, how the payments work. What do you say about those
Yeah.
that are
Yeah, no,
afraid
no,
to
no, very
go
good question.
remotely?
Because obviously, my first foray into getting a VA was a long distance VA, right? Like, and it was,
Yes.
I could have easily gotten someone here in the United States, but like
Hmm.
when I started to think about it, like it's not like I would be having, face to face contact with them. Anyways, majority of my contact would be via a Zoom or some type of, video type of conferencing technology. So like my fear wasn't as significant like to get someone right in the Philippines. Right? It just wasn't right again. And this is where I think word of mouth is so key because I
Yes.
remember talking to a doctor at a conference. And I was like, and he has 6 podcasts, and I was like, how do you have 6? Again, I did him like people do me now. I was like,
Yeah.
how do you have 6 podcasts? He's like, oh, like no, I got like 4 or 5 VAs, and it just works for him. So I think the whole internet connection I think is very overblown.
Hmm.
Um, like is like I'm in the United States. I have internet connection sometimes too, right? Like it's usually not something where you have to feel like it's going to be a prolonged aspect of it. Now, of course, obviously, it may matter, especially if you're handling large related files. But I think with aspects like Google Drive and Zoom and Dropbox and all these things there, they've definitely helped lessen that burden of
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
aspect of transfer, right? And that's why I think it's so important, especially when you're working on VA long distance, is kind of having your own set schedule because you don't see, you don't physically see your VA. Like if I was working
Hmm.
in an office, I would see my employee every day. And sometimes when I see content creators want to get with a VA, like they'll get with the VA, but then they don't talk to them for like 3 weeks. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Like if that was your employee, you would be talking to your employee much more often.
Hmm.
So establishing a schedule, right? Where it's like, all right, hey, every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Friday, whatever that day is, we're going to be meeting at this time of here. This is going to be the breakdown of what we're going to be talking about,
Yeah.
and just kind of going through the motions to the point when it's like riding a bike, right? Like we're at a
Mm.
point now where we don't necessarily even have to have a meeting because we already know what's happening. We already know, boop, 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 this happens this
Yeah.
week, this happens this week. But like it takes time to get there. So I think like understanding that you're gonna likely be talking to whoever your VA is video conferencing anyways, right? Like so just do that, right? And like
Hmm.
even if this person was face to face with me, if I as a content creator, the business owner, have trouble delineating, or if I have trouble even understanding how to train, it doesn't matter if they're right next to me or they're across the world, right? That
Yes.
doesn't make a difference, right? So it's always the onus on the content creator to understand, all right, what is my process? Can I write like we did a lot of video training, right? Where I would just record myself on the video, say, hey, all right, this is how I typically do the podcast. Boop, boop. And like I'm recording myself doing it. And now she has a
Yes.
video log of the training, right? So she doesn't even
Hmm.
have to ask me again. She can just write right back to the video, like, oh, this is how I put it in co-schedule. This is how I do it. And like, because and we did a lot of those. But again, you have to know as a business content creator, like what those steps are, because a lot of times we get so used to doing it just so automatically that we don't even realize that we're doing a lot of work, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I tell content creator all the time, you should be getting a VA yesterday, because once you have to actually write down like all of the
Hmm.
steps that you do, you realize like wow, like I'm doing a
That's a
lot
lot
of
of work.
a lot of work out here. What am I like? What am I doing? So that's why I think it's so key. So I don't think that people should be fearful of not necessarily seeing a person face to face, right?
Mhm.
Because if you as the content creator create good procedures and protocols on how you want to meet, how often you want to meet, how you want tasks done, how you want tasks assessed, checked off, like as long as you're creating like that standard, like everything makes sense, right? Like it just is what it is in that regard. So I think obviously if and I think once you get to that point, right, especially when we talk about like the internet outages and whatnot,
Yes.
that's why it's so important to kind of know what the process is, right? So you're not
Mhm.
necessarily having to do the process that day of, that week of, that like the night, like you don't have to do it because you already know what the process is before. So you don't necessarily need this level of communication. And if you do need a level of communication, like I said, we have Slack, we have Skype. There are so many different opportunities, apps that allow communication to be instant, right? That
Mhm.
again, I don't think that's a barrier anymore. Right. Anytime you have a question for me, I boom, my Slack, and then sometimes it's of course like I'm guilty, right? Because I'm here in the United States, right? So
Yeah.
in the middle of the day, I'm thinking of stuff, right? Not realizing that I'm texting a person at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So like, oh, hopefully they'll get this when they wake up. But like how I just and then, but like I'm not like doing it for an immediate reaction. I'm just doing it because like, oh, now that I think about it, let me ask this question here. When they get to it, they'll get back to me. But
Mhm.
that's when we talk about the family relationship, right? Like understanding, like,
Yes.
all right, yep, she's asleep, but that's okay. Like she'll sleep in the morning, and then she'll text me back in the morning, which is like my nighttime in that regard. So I think for sure, is that fear there? Yeah, but like I think technology and the way it is now, it's gotten so much easier for you that those barriers are very small. And those when people usually tell me that, I usually get, especially when a content creator tells me that, I usually put that on them. So, oh well, if you know how to train, right, you'll be fine, right? You probably don't have the
Mhm.
training aspect yet, and that's why you have a fear that they're across the world.
I like that. And you know what? Sometimes we would meet with Dr. Barry. I mean, the last time we had a meeting, I was at the beach and I was like,
Right.
as long as you have a stable internet connection, you can meet and you can talk
You can
to your
meet that.
client
You can meet
anytime.
that. So yeah, that's why I think it's the world we live in now. It's so much easier. Um, the processes that we have, the software that we have, it's so much
Hmm.
easier. To do these things that I don't think it has to be a barrier
Yeah.
anymore as far as being able to connect. Right. Like I don't think
Yes,
connection is as significant as a barrier as it may have been.
I agree. And but of course, you just have to set your client's expectations on the outage and
Yep.
typhoon and all that stuff. But
Definitely.
in general, like majority of the time, you would always be available. And Podsters, this is why I really believe in podcasting, because a lot or every day podcast is growing and growing. It just keeps growing. There's just no way but up. And so every day, more and more podcasters will need a VA like you, like us. They would need podcast producers. They would need someone to help launch their podcast. Someone is just way too busy to do
Oh, yeah.
the things that they need to do or to learn the things that they need to learn.
I think as a VA, like, and I can tell you as a content creator, our pain points usually will center around either getting a guest, scheduling a guest,
Hmm.
recording said guest, or after post production, putting the information out. Right, like those are
Yes.
going to be our 4 to 5 main pain points. So if you come in and say, "Hey, I can help." Get you guest schedule, like if you come in and then like hit them with those 5 points, you're gonna be like, oh, like there's not gonna be there's not gonna be a content creator who's gonna have a problem with that, right? And they're gonna be like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, all right, like that's what I need. Like I have issues scheduling, or now you can help me scheduling. Oh, that makes it so much easier for me. So understanding like the pain points, especially as a podcaster, those are gonna be your biggest ones, right? And
Yes.
and and realize that again, there's so many like little things like that occur. that get the podcast out. Like, well, we don't necessarily think about it because we, by the time we typically see the end result, right? But all these
Yes,
things,
exactly.
that occur, that as a VA, you could be such a valuable part in getting it out there. And then again, once you make it easy for the content creator to create content, then they create more content, right? Like, it
Mm-hmm.
sounds self-explanatory, but once it's easy for them to create content, then they just keep on creating, which is what you want them to do, right? You want them to create content. Like,
Yes,
I tell people,
because
if
that's how you get the work.
that's how you get to work. If I, for example, if like we're on episode 190, if
Mhm.
I were to not record, right, one video, right, like if I don't record one video, that means that now I don't have an episode on my YouTube. That means now I don't have an episode for the podcast. That
Mhm.
means now I don't have graphics for my Instagram page. That means now I don't have anything to share on my personal Instagram page, which then means I don't have anything to share on my other websites for one, after just one video, right?
Yeah.
So you want the content creator to create that one video, because then all of the work, that the graphics, that now there's a graphic that doesn't need to be made, like all these things that need to occur, but it doesn't occur until that content creator gets to work.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I would like to quote Mommy Ella and Mommy Say. They're also podcast producers. They say that the goal for us as podcast VAs is to just make the client record and we do the rest. Like, record and then we take care of the rest and then repeat. That's how we get the job. That's how we have consistent job, regular job. If we can just make the client just record, press stop, send us the file, and then we do the rest of
The
of
rest.
the things. And then that is why we are indispensable because we are important. We are very much we are a big part of the business and the podcasters, and how they build their brand. So
Definitely.
yeah, that wraps up our session. Thank you so much, Dr. Barry. As always, you've been very generous with your time, and I really appreciate that of you. And I believe this will be very helpful to those who are watching and will be rewatching because it's early. It's still early today. Those who will be rewatching, I hope that this session gives you more idea of what it is to be, or of a life of a podcast VA and a podcaster, and how they look at us and how we can be valuable to them.
Oh,
Thank you
yeah.
so much, Dr. Barry. I hope that video helped, and if it did, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell para ma-notify ka sa mga future videos. To know more about podcasting and podcast management, join us in our exclusive Facebook group. Simply search Podcast VAs Philippines. Have a great day.
Okay, alright.